has a history of denigrating you because you think that's a sign of strength, because that's what being a man is, putting women down. That's not acceptable.
So a remarkable moment there from the first black man to be the U.S. president and making an appeal there, because this is a weak spot for the Harris campaign. It's demonstrated in polls that former President Donald Trump has been able to peel off some black men, black voters to his coalition. And so that is what they're trying to shore up again. So that was a remarkable and sobering moment from former President Barack Obama making that appeal and suggesting that what is contributing to this is this waning enthusiasm is sexism. Now, he's not the only surrogate hitting the campaign trail, and he's going to do a lot more of it. Joe Biden, the First Lady, also going to be hitting battleground states next week. Vice President Kamala Harris next week also looking to speak directly to black voters. She's going to participate in a radio town hall with Charlemagne the God, who, by the way, has millions of listeners. More than half of them are black. So clearly, this is an all-out effort by the Democratic Party to try to build up and lock in that coalition ahead of November, as these polls just completely remain deadlocked. Only slight edges here and there, and something that there is some anxiety about, but that they are trying to hit and target with these surrogates hitting the trail.
Yeah, there's a new Wall Street Journal poll out this morning, and it shows these margins are just razor thin in these battleground states. So any percent here or there will definitely make a big difference. Kristen Holmes, you're in Aurora, where Trump will be later today. Give us a sense of what we're going to hear out there today.
Well, Jim, this messaging is going to be all about immigration. I mean, this is a solidly blue state of Colorado. He's not here to reach out individually to swing state voters. Instead, this is a chance for him to amplify his rhetoric, much of it false, about immigration in America, particularly the fact that he has gone on and on about Aurora, Colorado, saying time and time again in his various campaign speeches that it is overrun by Venezuelan gangs. Something to note, of course, we have heard from state officials, including the governor, who says this is simply not true. One state official saying that perhaps this rally here would actually shed light on the fact that those are falsehoods. But Donald Trump continues to use that kind of fear-based messaging. And one thing to note is that it could be working. This is something that we hear from him when it comes to immigration, when it comes to the economy. Part of his messaging yesterday in Detroit was essentially attacking the city of Detroit and stoking fear that any problems with Detroit could become problems within the entire United States. But again, his campaign and he himself believe that this messaging works. And if you look behind me, you can see that there are hundreds of people in line. And as you mentioned, those Wall Street Journal polls, they show how slim that margin is. So it doesn't seem like this rhetoric is going to stop anytime soon. Now, one thing I do want to point out, and this is just in terms of Barack Obama and Harris campaign, we all know that the former president has very thin skin, former President Donald Trump. And one thing that really gets under it is the former President Barack Obama. So this is likely to be something that comes up either here today or later when he is speaking in Reno, Nevada. I find it hard to believe he would let this just slide because of the fact that he takes things so personally.
Yeah, Chris, I mean, there was that moment last night when Barack Obama said the reason why Trump's economy was good in the minds of a lot of voters is because it was his economy before it was Trump's economy. I have to think that got under Donald Trump's skin, and he's going to be responding to that at some point today. All right, Priscilla and Kristen, thank you so much. Joining me now is Florida Democratic Congressman Maxwell Frost. Congressman, what did you make of former President Obama's comments, particularly those geared towards African-American men? What did you think of that?
Honestly, I think President Obama is a little bit ticked off at a lot of the things he's seen coming from the Republican Party, from Donald Trump, from J.D. Vance, in light of major devastation. Hurricanes just hit my home of Orlando, the state of Florida, and of course Hurricane Helene last week. I mean, it's just shameful that somebody and the politicians, someone with a lot of influence like Donald Trump, would use his platform to spread mis and disinformation, which could lead to lost lives and more lost property. The other thing is, I think, we're getting up to the election here, and the president wants to speak frankly to young black men, young men of color across this country, and in a very frank way. And I think we need a little bit more of that on the campaign trail. And you need the right surrogates, the right people to have that frank conversation. The president knows when he is talking to a room of people, he's not just talking to that room of people, right? He knows that that video will get out, be spread to the masses, and it creates a situation where you're going to have tons of young black men watching that video at home, on Twitter, on Facebook, on whatever, and maybe reflecting on the decision they've made either to support former President Trump or to not vote at all. And I think that's a really important thing that we need people to have that conversation with themselves.
Yeah, and Congressman, I do want to ask you about the hurricane in just a moment, but I want to ask you about some of the anxiety in the Democratic Party about the race with just 25 days until the election. There are some in the party, let's just face it, they worry that Kamala Harris has lost some momentum here. Do you share that view? What's your sense of it?
I mean, it's a tight race, and we've always known it would be a tight race. The vice president has said since the beginning that we're the underdog. And so I think for the campaign and for us out on the trail, nothing has changed. We knew it would be like this a while ago. We knew that people would be excited, that excitement would continue. I mean, you look at the rallies that are going on, the enthusiasm is still there, especially on the trail. But we know that the enthusiasm in and of itself isn't enough to win. The vibes, though, always equal votes, and that's what we have to do as organizers on the trail, as volunteers, as people working on this, to make sure that those vibes do translate into votes, and then we get people out to make sure they vote. I do believe that this year we're going to have the highest youth voter turnout in the history of our country. The highest right now was in 2020. I think we're going to beat that here in 2024. I think we're going to be able to expand the electorate, and we're going to have one of the highest turnouts for an election in the history of our country as well. And we just need to keep going until the end here. But we always knew it would be a close election. I do believe the vice president's going to win the popular vote, but we know that that's not how elections are decided. For I think worse, for worse in this country, it comes down to just a few states. And so that's why the vice president, Governor Walz, and all the surrogates are on these states, making sure that people know we're not taking your votes for granted.
And Congressman, I did want to ask you about Hurricane Milton, and I guess to wrap into that, I mean, Trump's repeated lies about the federal hurricane response. We saw that after Hurricane Helene. Are you concerned that you're going to see that in Florida after Hurricane Milton? And we should note, I mean, President Biden didn't respond to some of this. Let's play a little bit of that, talk about on the other side.
Mr. President Trump, former President Trump, get a life, man. Help these people.
Yeah, Congressman. I mean, are you starting to run into some of this after Milton in Florida in your district? What can you tell us?
Yes, running into it after Milton, and I was running into it before Milton. When we were at the shelters, when we were out talking with people, a lot of folks would come up to me and ask about some of these rumors they've heard. And what people need to realize is when someone like Donald Trump is speaking to his base at a rally, again, he's not just speaking to his base. And a lot of times these folks will take this disinformation, bring it to their community, and it spreads. You know, in these natural disasters, word of mouth is very important in getting information out to the masses. And a lot of this has been spreading, whether it's the false numbers on how much money FEMA's get, or how much individual assistance people are getting, or people coming up to me saying, I heard that something's already been approved. Has it been approved? Has it not been? Because they're getting their news from bad sources. And Donald Trump wants to use this natural disaster to rev people up and make FEMA and responding to this natural disaster a political point. In these disasters, every second matters. And when people have to spend more time sifting through all the lies to get to the truth, people can die. And this is why it's important. That I agree with what President Biden said. He does need to get a life. And if he wants that to be a part of this conversation on the storm, maybe he better put his money where his mouth is and set it towards his legal fees and helping people recover from this.
All right, Florida Democratic Congressman Maxwell Frost. So I saw that you went on a ride on a Hurricane Hunter flight earlier this week, getting a view of what Hurricane Milton was all about from up in the skies as well. Congressman, thanks so much for your time this morning. We appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.
All right, coming up, they thought they were safe from Milton's fury, but hundreds had to be rescued from places thought to be out of reach by the floodwaters. Some of those dramatic images are coming up in just a few moments. Stay with us.